Welcome to Beyond the Frame, Episode 5, a podcast where we dive deeper into the professional lives of an esports creative. I'm your host, Mario Prosperino, co-founder of ESPAT, and I'm really psyched for today's episode. We got Nick from 1UP Studios and Team Liquid, and Charles from G2. What's going on, guys?
Hey, dude. How you doing?
How's it going?
Listen, man, thanks for hopping on. Really been following you guys' work. And I'm glad you guys are on the episode. Let's start off with a very simple question. We'll start with Nick. What's it like working for a renowned and recognizable organization like Team Liquid?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's very fast-paced. I'll tell you what. We have to get a lot of stuff done. And 1UP is a big team, but for the most part on production, it gets pretty narrow. We're a pretty large team in terms of pure staff. I think we're at almost, I don't want to get this wrong, I think we're at like 17 or 18 people total. And then in NA for production, it's myself, Caroline, Joey, who is one of our producers, John, who is our new head of 1UP Studios, and then that's pretty much it, and so Caroline and I are the ones that usually hold it down in terms of everything from lighting scenes to shooting our documentaries to shooting our announcement videos, and but we are a close crew. We're really close to each other, so we try to make do and do the best we can. And I think that is really awesome when the organization around you is giving you the support and the finances to make really cool stuff. So yeah, it's awesome.
What about your facility? I mean, you're in the Alienware facility. Is that what you guys call it?
Yeah, the Alienware training facility. Now we have two of them. There's one in Utrecht in the Netherlands, which is where Bart and Reese, who are two of our producers over there, and then here in North America and Los Angeles. And so it's pretty great. It makes us a beautiful backdrop and a great set when we're doing our announcement videos and other kinds of shoots. And then, for when the League of Legends team played the entire summer split out of this facility, including the playoffs. So it was fun to shoot.
Great. Charles, G2, Organization of the Year for the 2020 Esports Awards. Don't discount the fact that you guys probably had a lot to do with that on the content side. What's it like working at G2?
I mean, what Nick said, right? It's very fast-paced. I think every org in esports is fast-paced because things just happen so fast and you don't have a lot of time to plan. And I think everybody who works in esports will tell you that time is really of the essence, and working at G2 is no different. We have one HQ. We don't have any presence in North America yet, but it's something that we obviously always looking at. But yeah, we're in Berlin. We've got a big office now. When I started, we had a much smaller office. When I started, we had 8 people in the office, including Carlos. And now we have a bunch more people. I literally couldn't even tell you how many people we have. But we have this wonderful HQ in the middle of Berlin, all nice glass facade and plenty of space to chill and watch games and work together in this very open space environment. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun working esports, and I think G2 is probably up there right now. I mean, like you said, just Esports Organization of the Year 2 days ago. So I think we're doing something right.
Yep. Kudos. Let's stay with you, Charles. You just got back from a trip in Sweden. You guys landed Rekkles, right? So take us to, you got the news. How quick was it where you and the crew had to fly out to Sweden and shoot that piece?
Okay, so this announcement was super not rushed, but once it was signed, everything was solid, right? We had no idea about anything that was going on as content team, as individuals in the company, right? Because this is sort of above our pay grade. We don't really get involved in announcements or fees or whatever, right? I still don't know exactly the ins and outs of that. All I know that was I got a call on Wednesday evening saying, by the way, we've signed Rekkles. He's going to replace Perkz. You guys need to go out and shoot an announcement video. I'm like, right. And does this mean we need to go to Sweden? He's like, yeah, this means we need to go to Sweden. So me and my producer, Karina, who's basically, she's head of content at G2, so she's always involved in everything, but she loves being involved in the shoots as well. It always used to be like me and her used to be like the duo back in the day when we didn't have a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we like jumped on a flight, flew, shot the next day with Martin at his home, and he was like super professional, like one of the nicest like players that I think that I've ever like met. Like it was like a first time thing, you know. He like invited us into his home. He made sure we were fine. He was like a star. He like even carried some of the gear when it was just the three of us walking around, because we took like a bunch of bags. We had a slider, which maybe it was a bit overkill, but at the time it was just a case of like, okay, we need a hype announcement video. So we have to write this super fast and then like write this and basically go straight to the airport as soon as we like finish, you know, grab just a bunch of stuff. We're like, maybe this is useful. Jump on a flight. We shot in one day. Then we uploaded the footage overnight. Flew back the next day. By the time we landed, there was like already an edit that was basically done. So yeah, it's been a rough week. It's been a stressful week for sure, but I'm just glad that we made a like really, really good video that everybody was super happy about. Everybody was really enjoyed, and I got a lot of good feedback from that video. So I'm just happy it all sort of came together at the end, which is sort of the G2 motto. It always comes together at the end.
So you're basically building rapport with Martin at the same time of doing your job, right? You've never met him before. There was no chemistry. Obviously, you guys, you know, he was that fanatic. So you're literally getting to know him as you're doing your job, right?
Yeah, and that for me is really difficult, because I think a lot of people can just shoot, right? A lot of people can pick up a camera and film, but I think the value that us, like esports videographers like me and Nick, and obviously a bunch of other people who are in the industry, is we know how to talk to players, and we know how to get the most out of players. We work with a lot of freelancers where sometimes if an event happens in the US or whatever and we can't travel or we're busy, we send a freelancer. And the result you get from freelancers is never as good as the result you can get from people in-house, because you don't have that personal connection, right? Yeah. So meeting Martin for the first time, which was literally, I think it was the second time I ever spoke to him, like ever, considering I've been in the scene for like 3 years, you know, like we really don't have that much crossover in League in Europe. Like we stay very much in like our own little bubbles. But yeah, like he was just a super nice guy. He was super willing to do whatever we sort of asked of him. You know, we went out in the cold, we went out in the rain. It was a lot of work. It was a 1.5 really long days of shooting, you know, and he just didn't complain at all. Like he was a real model professional. And I think working into 2021, yeah, I think.
Does he see the piece when it goes out, or do you guys kind of like show him a rough cut?
We showed him about 10, 15 minutes, I think, before it went out. Usually we like to get player feedback before then, but with this, because we knew the announcement timing was so like on a knife's edge, we had to just quickly just be like, hey, like, do you have anything that you really don't like about this? And we'll try and get it, like, we'll try and remove it. But he loved it. He thought it was perfectly on him. It was very like on his own like brand. And this is one of the things that people like said is like, G2 as a whole, I know like we like doing this fun, very light-hearted comedic content, but I think for some videos, like especially when it's new players being brought into the brand that haven't necessarily been a part of a brand like this before, I think it's really difficult to just, if we flew over there and we're just like, right, you need to do some really wild, funny, humorous video with, I mean, he knows Karina from the past because they used to work in Fnatic together, I think, and she used to be a journalist in the EULCS. So she knows a lot more players than I do. But for me, it's like, again, first time meeting him, right? So it's tough to just go there and be like, right, can you just be like a little bit cringe and a little bit silly on camera right in front of me, who's like, I've only just met you, you know? So I think for this video, cinematic and like serious and like very like storytelling was definitely the play.
Well, kudos to you. And in due time, I'm sure you guys will have some really funny stuff to put out. Nick, what about you guys? You've had to say goodbye to a couple of players. Tell us about the rapport and the friendships you create during the whole, really the whole journey of shooting League in this case. Who are you going to miss the most? And tell me more about the relationships you've built.
Man, who am I gonna? That's a hard question because I'm gonna miss them all. Yeah, I mean, I really started to build relationships with all of our players really quickly, and this year's been hard. In a lot of ways, um, you know, when the spring split ended and we ended in ninth place, we weren't even. I didn't even see the guys for about 3 weeks. I lived really close at the time to where the team lived, so occasionally I would see Broxa. But I when Doublelift left, that was difficult. Like he was probably at the time my closest friend on the team, and so I'd really started to build rapport with him over the last couple of years. Um, and then now at the end of Worlds, after we get to spend a month with each other, everybody. It's kind of radio silence, and then all of a sudden, goodbye Impact, goodbye Broxa, goodbye Kane. Um, you know, Kane was to me like somebody who was really quiet, but had this like really fun and like emotive side. And he was amazing to film with because he was just so professional and so serious. But he knew when to like crack a joke. And his English was getting a lot better too, so it was a lot easier to communicate with them. And then Broxa was like somebody who I hadn't met until the boot camp. There was this European boot camp that we did last year in Utrecht at our apartment offices before our facility had opened in the end of 2019. And it was just Jensen, our mid laner, and Broxa and Kane. And so the three of us pretty much all met Broxa for the first time at that boot camp, and he was just a really nice guy. We went out for coffee one morning there, and they wouldn't accept any of our cards, and so like Broxa went and got like some cash, and it ended up paying for us all. It was just like we found that this guy was just really, really nice. And so, he'd been on the team the least amount of time for, less than a year, but we really quickly started to get connected with them. And then Impact was just a joy to have around on the team, and was just always that rock, and always was going to call you cringe and say random Twitch chat memes. So, yeah, I mean, who am I going to miss the most? That would be a hard question. I think that they're all really great, and when you're with the team, I made a post or something like that said like I'm with this team more than I'm with my own family. And it's true. I'm sometimes I'm away with these teams for a month and a half at a time, and it's just something really special that you build when there's only 6 or 7 guys, or in our case with all the coaching staff and everybody. We lost or we had Tyler and Croissant depart as well, who were really starting to build relationships here, and I became really friendly with. When you spend so much time with people, you become really friendly, and so when they leave, it sucks. But I'm looking forward to the future, and I think Jat has a really good head on his shoulders, and look forward to see what he does. And I'm sure we'll build new relationships with Alfari and with Santorin, who both seem like really nice guys.
Have you guys shot content with anybody who's new on the team yet?
Yes and no. So our Alfari has actually been at the EU facility for quite a while now. And so he has been working with Bart and Reese, who are 2 videographers / producers in Utrecht, and they're mainstays in the Netherlands. And then Santorin is actually in Canada right now with his girlfriend, I believe. I don't want to get that wrong, but I think so. And so we haven't been able to film anything with him in person, but we've done a bunch of virtual stuff, and they seem like nice people. I haven't been too involved on that stuff, minus filming the Liquid update, which is how we announced them here.
Gotcha. Charles, did you have a chance to say goodbye to Perkz, and how do you think he'll do in NA?
So I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to Perkz, which sucks. He's been one of the players that was there when I joined G2, which is quite rare because I've been here now for 3 years, and esports careers, at least in teams, don't usually last more than 2 years. But no, again, like same with Nick, right? Like me and Perkz did a lot of stuff. We were there through like together through like a lot of lows, especially in like the 2018 season where we like came out of a full roster change. Obviously, we lost our bot lane. Our bot lane went to NA, and we had to like rebuild this team. And Perkz sort of spearheaded that rebuilding. And we were there when we lost to Fnatic in Copenhagen in spring 2018. And then I was also there when we beat RNG at Worlds in Korea, and it was like the biggest upset in like esports of all time, right? Yeah. And that like it was just like this for times 3 years, right? Like we won MSI, I was there when we won MSI together, and I've been there for all of the splits that we've won since. And it sucks to see a guy like this that you like. Again, like Nick said, I see him more than I see a lot of my other friends, you know? I see him more than I see all of my UK friends. And for all of a sudden for that to be like, oh, he's gone now. Maybe you'll see him at MSI, or maybe you'll see him at Worlds if he makes this, you know, if it even happens. So I'm sure by the time we do get to like meet up again, that we'll have a lot to talk about. And yeah, it sucks, right? This is also the nature of the business, and I'm also looking forward to like working with Rekkles and all the other like players and things like this that we bring in to like all of our different teams. Players come and go, but I always see them around, so it's all
Absolutely.
good.
Absolutely. Let's start with the journey to how you guys got to this point. Can you guys take me back, let's say 4 to 5 years ago, how you got your start? Was there somebody that was instrumental in getting you to where you are now? Let's start with Nick.
Ooh, that's an interesting question. So about 5 years ago, and I really wasn't super into like photography or videography or anything of the sort. I was I played a lot of video games, growing up, and I actually kind of became a part of this like Call of Duty community of like people who made montages and did gameplay commentaries and stuff like that. And so I had a bunch of friends of mine who wanted to meet up for this event that was happening called MLG Orlando in 2016, I want to say. Yeah, that sounds right. And so I decided to go to Best Buy. I was working a day job at the time at a country club. And I decided to go and buy just like a T4i, T5i or something like that, just so I could take some photos and some video while I went. And pretty much when I went there, I saw that there were a bunch of photographers running around, and I was like, oh, well, I guess this is someone's job. This is fun. I just had a lot of fun being around that environment. So I flew myself out to Vegas 3 months later for another event like that. And after that, I just kept trying to work with people and network and, get to know the industry. And then, fast forward a few years, I got an opportunity to come out to LA when franchising happened, both in Overwatch League and with League of Legends. And I worked for the Florida franchise Mayhem, or Misfits is their European counterpart. And, really got an opportunity to sharpen a lot of those tools that I'd learned over time. And I fell in love with kind of the art of it and working with the players and getting to know people, because that's ultimately, I just had a lot of passion for telling stories and for, my thing that keeps me grounded at the end of all of this is when these players' careers are over, all that they have to look back on is what we make. So It's important that we take our job seriously, and as if, whether we make something great or make something poor, it needs to be for these people and for them to look back on.
Charles, what about you?
So my story here was completely different. So like Nick, like I was studying, I was in film school, I was coming towards the end of film school and like the whole graduation thing, and this is like whatever happened. I think when you're in film school, a lot of people who are there are working freelance on the side because you sort of have to. Like the film and TV industry, at least in the UK, is very competitive. So I was working, like doing a bit of freelance, doing some passion projects as I was coming up to this like final year of graduation. And then I graduated, and then I was I decided to take a little bit of time off because I'd been like studying like basically my entire life, right? So I took like 6 months where I was just like, right, I'm just going to chill. I'm just going to hang out. I'm just going to play games. I'm just going to enjoy life, see my friends, blah, blah. And then I was like, after that 6 months, I'm going to like start going into like freelancing to either get work as like a camera assistant. I always wanted to go into like cinematography. So usually the traditional route there is sort of starts off as like a camera trainee, and then you like become like a camera assistant or like a loader or something like this, right? And then you eventually become like an operator and then a DP. So what happened was one day I was just scrolling through Twitter and I see G2's job posting. And I'm like, oh, cool, like videography. Like I've always been into esports. I've always been into games. I was like, I've just graduated. I was like, let me just see what the requirements are, right? And I was just sort of just messing about, really looking through. I was like, this is a full-time position in Berlin. I was like, yeah, right. Like requires like a lot of experience. I was like, yeah, well, whatever, you know. I applied for it and I got an interview. And by the time I got an interview, I was like, okay, this is like pretty good, you know. Like this is a pretty good. Like I would happily stop here, you know. Just the fact that somebody looked at my like portfolio and was actually interested enough to give me an interview, I was like, this is really good, like start for my career, you know. And then I had to speak with Karina again, head of content G2, like one of my biggest mentors and like one of my like best friends in the company, I think. And she got back to me. She was like, well, we're having a CSGO boot camp. Our CSGO team's going to be in Berlin next week. Do you want to come over and shoot like a boot camp video? And I was like, well, sure. At this point, I was still not planning on taking the job full time anyway, because I didn't want to move to Berlin. Like Germany just seemed very far away from this small town in the UK where I'm from, right? So, and like it was such a big like life choice, and I was like, well, I'm just going to always play it safe, right? And I'm not going to do this, but I mean, I get to meet Kenny S and I get to meet Shocks, so sure, why not? So I jumped on a flight. We shot this week, and then at the end of that week, she was like, so I would love to give you the like position full time. And I was like, shit. Then I was like, right. I had to decide, you know. I was like, so I went back home and like, I thought about it, but I knew like in the back of my mind that I was definitely going to take it, because like opportunities are always like very few and far between. I think, you know, an opportunity like this, and especially in esports, this was literally merging both of my like passions of doing like making films and playing games. It was just merging them into this one like dream job, basically, you know. So I took the job. I moved out to Berlin, moved in an apartment with a bunch of G2 guys, and the rest is sort of history. Like a few weeks later, I was shooting Blast, the first Blast event in Copenhagen for CSGO.
Well, so safe to say, Charles, I mean, you didn't have a really robust portfolio or just experience, and I really got to like give kudos to Karina and G2 for really probably kind of seeing your DNA and who you were as a person, and then it's like, the rest is up to you. But you know, a lot of times in traditional corporate, people get fixated on resumes and where have you worked and your experience and are you endemic or non-endemic, and you're still there, and obviously you're one of the most prominent, you know, videographers in the world. So kudos to Karina for having the foresight and really a great pickup by G2 a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I owe everything to Karina, basically. She's the one who, took the chance, and she's the one who, like, still lets me, like, live this dream life where I'm, like, traveling everywhere and meeting all these cool people and, like, all this, like, I owe to her, because I don't know how many people would have taken a chance on me like that. And I think we had, like, a discussion about this the other week, actually. And she was saying there was, like, one video piece there that I made about my dad and his, like, old classic sports car. And it was like a little portrait documentary that I filmed, me and like a few other people. I directed it, and we shot it over like 2 days. And it was just something from like, not only for myself, but for my dad, you know, because he loves this car. And it was a complete passion project. There was no money from any external sources. We rented our own stuff. We shot a lot of it with my car, with the trunk of the car open, with my mate sat in the back with the camera filming out on like a 60-mile-an-hour road. Like it was all really like dangerous. It was all super like ghetto and super run and gun, you know. And that was the piece that she liked the most. That was the piece where, and she told me that she was like, well, if her, who has no connection to my family or this sort of thing, if she can like care about this by watching this video, then why couldn't I do this in esports?
Well, listen, when you finally get that Videographer of the Year award, we know that Carino pretty much will have a lot to do with that. So
for sure.
Let's segue into Worlds. What an interesting time for everybody, and it was great that the Riot was able to pull it off via the bubble. Nick, let's start with you. Take us to the very beginning when you guys obviously knew you were going to Worlds, and just what was it like? I mean, really, not a lot of people were there. We didn't get that much kind of coverage coming out of the bubble, but take us kind of the behind the scenes with Liquid and Worlds.
Yeah. So, well, first off, I want to start before we went, because that was probably one of the more stressful times for me. Because once we actually left, it was almost this huge sigh of relief for me, because pretty much we found out that we qualified, I believe, in July. I think it was right after the first week of playoffs. So we beat Golden Guardians 3-0, and then we automatically qualified for Worlds. But even leading up until that point, I was scared to go outside, pretty much, because I was like, I don't even want to go to the grocery store. I want to order all my groceries to my apartment. I only want to go from my apartment to the office and back, because if I was the reason the team didn't go to Worlds, I didn't know what I would do. I would be very upset with myself. So it was a very stressful time leading up until Worlds. I'm sure even more stressful for the players because they're trying to actually play and win. But once we did a bunch of COVID testing, and once we left for Worlds, it was just kind of a sigh of relief. It was about 26 hours of travel, I believe, until we finally got to the quarantine hotel, went through a bunch of procedures, and then we were just in our rooms for 14 days. Which was, I think, for everyone a little bit of a different experience, but for me, it was a very introspective one. I actually filmed like a vlog of myself where it wasn't much of a vlog. It was just I gave daily updates to a camera that I just set up in there, because I just wanted to see if I you watch shows like Castaway, and you watch movies of people being stuck in certain places in isolation, and I was like, I wonder what it actually would do to me. So it's pretty interesting. I don't know if I'll actually post it, but I mean, you forget that the first time that you see someone in 12 days is so they can stick a cotton swab down your throat and then give you another COVID test, right? And it was a weird experience overall, the quarantine, but I'd say that it was definitely a positive one for me, and I took a lot of good things out of it. So then when we finally get out of quarantine, for us, since we were in the play-in stage, we had to play the next day. So we went straight from the quarantine hotel to the venue to do our tech check. I hadn't seen a stage since March, so it blew me away. They had these stages that were probably like 20 or 30 feet long, the sleds on each side, because it was 6 feet in between each player's monitors, and so that it complied with COVID guidelines. And just the LED walls, pretty much 180 degrees all around, and then there was this grid of lights above that was all AR'd out, and when it actually went on to broadcast. But it was a really, like, I hadn't seen a broadcast studio like that in a long time, and I hadn't seen a stage since March, so it was really, really cool to see. And then over the course of the competition, obviously, it was really fun and awesome to watch the players go up on those stages and be able to play and have that excitement and joy that just didn't exist for so long here, because you can try to replicate the pressure and the experience of being on stage when you're in our facility, and thankfully they're not having to play out of their apartment, but it's just there's something different about being able to play on this like really cool stage, and the lighting is different and the environment is different, and you get to see the other team on the other side. So when you are celebrating in victory, the other team is anguishing in defeat. There's like this electricity that happens in the air when that happens. And so for me, being able to document that, it was something really special, both because the human element of them experiencing this stage and experiencing Shanghai and really being a team together for the first time all year. Because if you remember, Broxa actually, his visa was so delayed that he didn't actually get to America until mid-February. So he was only on stage and with the team for about 2 weeks before we went into quarantine. So really, with Tactical and with Broxa and with Jat, Croissant, this was the first experience of that whole team together, being able to go to a team dinner, being able to, spend time together. And, I think we really all got to bond a little bit throughout that experience. And that was something I hope that we documented well in our piece. And that it was just a really special experience for me.
And then in the final episode, we see Jensen having some difficulties, right, in the hotel. Something so simple as staying at a hotel, but yet it was weighing on him, correct?
Yeah. So I'll give a little bit of context on that. I think Jensen was really, really incredible for being able to put up with that. He was really struggling to sleep and just going through basic function with all the stress that was going on with that. And so to be able to go out on stage for 2 days and play literally after the quarantine and then now having to deal with this new stress. I have a lot of respect for him for that. And I think there was a lot of trepidation around the whole team and around him with what we would include about it, because I think we were all a little worried that it might be a point where fans could look to him and do things that in my opinion are a little unfair towards him. But I hope and I think that we did it justice in what the situation was, without making it seem like it was anybody's fault, because ultimately, everybody was in a stressful situation. Everybody was going through problems. Being in Shanghai, I heard stories that some players getting locked out of their quarantine rooms because, and I can't imagine how stressful that would be if you didn't speak the language. So yeah, I mean, but his story is one that's special in my opinion, and I'm glad we got the chance to share it.
Sure. What about the G2 setup, Charles? Does any of this sound familiar to you?
It all sounds very, very familiar. It's taking me back. It's taking me back to those long. I mean, it was a long 7 weeks. It was a really long 7 weeks. And I think for me, the main takeaway from the quarantine was just that I felt like I'd almost like died, and I was like in like purgatory, or I was like looking down on the world from above, in terms of like my friends would go out and they would take trips, or my parents would go and they would go and see my sister from where she's studying like the other side of the country, and then they would come back up. And these things, of course, like there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world that was like happening. There was like the US election, like Corona getting like progressively like better in Europe, and then it got a little bit worse again. And all that time, I was just in these like same 4 walls, eating my food that was delivered like perfectly on time every day, just chilling. And we had like an exercise bike in the room, so I was working out a little bit. I was doing a bit of work. I was sleeping a lot. I was like really like.
You count the days. You have a calendar, and you're just putting the slashes in.
I really try to not think about it. I think for me, time goes faster when you're not waiting for something to happen. So for me, I sort of just arrived in the room. I was like, right, well, this is home for the next 2 weeks. I unpacked my suitcase, and I never do this in hotels. I am always one of the people who lives out of the suitcase, but I got there. I was like, I'm going to unpack all my suitcase, folded all my stuff, put it all in the wardrobes and everything. And yeah, it was just a surreal experience, and not just something that like you don't think you're ever going to go through, Like the only time I thought I would ever be that isolated for like a few weeks was if I ever went to like prison, And they did like a great job. Like Riot did a great job, making the quarantine as best as like they could like possibly make it, right? But there's a certain degree of just strangeness that comes from when you are on your own, just with your own thoughts all day, every day. And
What did you guys?
it's strange.
What did you guys gravitate towards more? Was it social media? Was it movies, Netflix? What was kind of like your recourse?
So for me, it was like a bit of everything. At first, I like started to make a schedule where I was really naive. I was like, yeah, this time I'm gonna start just like 10 a.m. I'm gonna do this, and then like 2 p.m. every day I'm gonna do this. And in the end, it was mainly me playing through the old Halo games on my little work laptop with a controller, and I was just playing through all these games on Legendary, and I was just that was my main passion at the time, because like Halo 2 on Legendary, if nobody played Halo 2 on Legendary, is like a very difficult game. Like you can be there for a fair few hours and not really get very far. So this was like my main sort of getaway, and then because especially for me, right, like I actually don't know what the time difference was between China and NA. Maybe it was even worse, but like for me
16.
it was like 6
hours.
hours. Yeah, for me it was 6 hours. So I only really had the sort of 6 hours towards the end of the day where I could actually talk to anybody else in Europe, you know?
Yeah.
And I obviously didn't want to bother like players all day because they had scrims. Like sometimes I would like just check in on them and see how they're doing, and we'd have like the odd like meeting every now and then. But in general, I wasn't really like, I didn't want to get in players' way, and I also didn't want to like not talk to anybody. So I sort of had these like 6 hours at the end of the day, which were like my social hours where I can talk to my friends and my family and stuff like this. The other hours was just me either just like bashing Netflix or just bashing Halo, honestly.
Well, you guys were for sure part of history, and I'm glad even like, for Nick, you actually did some recording on a personal level. So hopefully we can look back and have a chuckle down the road. How did you guys meet each other? Nick, how did you meet Charles? And quite frankly, what makes Charles just a phenomenal talent? You know, what do you like about Charles and the work he does? But even tell us how you actually met. Was it through social media, or did you guys actually, bump into each other at an event?
So I've never told Charles this, but I think this is funny. When I first saw Charles at MSI, and we never introduced ourselves to each other. So MSI 2019, and we both obviously went all the way to the finals before Charles and his team embarrassed us. I think I'm okay to say that it was not a pretty finals, and so we were riding off of the high a little bit of defeating IG before, and pretty much Charles was like figuring out his trophy shot for the day of G2, and I'm like, and he was walking around with his gimbal, and I'm like, man, he doesn't know, he's not going to get that trophy shot. I'm like so confident at this point because I'm like, oh, we're gonna win for sure. But like, I obviously wasn't saying that to anyone, but it's just I was internalizing, and so I never said it obviously to Charles or anything like that. But that was my first impression. And then obviously we got embarrassed. You guys lifted the trophy, and then we're sad boy. But when we actually met, I think we talked over social media just a little bit over at the beginning of 2020, I think. But I didn't really meet you until Worlds actually this year for the first time, and it was actually the last night that I was out. We went and got a drink, also with Pete from Fnatic and a couple of the other people from player management, and I feel like there's some other people there, but it's hard to remember at this point. But it was and we got to have really interesting conversations, and it was fun. And after that, we were like, yeah, we'll meet up in the Netherlands, or I'll come to Berlin, hopefully when all this COVID stuff is over. But I'd say that was the one thing that I loved the most about the bubble. I'll go back to that question a little bit, was the fact that, it's like kind of like that Kim Kardashian meme. It's like I got to take my friends and family to a private island. It did really feel like for a short period of time, like we could actually live normally for a little bit. And I got to go see Charles and some people that I'd wanted to see for a long time from Riot, and just have a drink at our hotel bar or something like that.
Charles, you remember the first encounter, and what is it about Nick that you just think he's a phenomenal talent as well?
So for me, I remember because it was the first time I saw you and Caroline, It was at MSI 2019, and I knew of Caroline in the past, but I wasn't particularly like I wasn't too involved in like the NA the NA videography scene or whatever, because we like hadn't really met that much with like a lot of people. So I knew who Caroline was because she shot something, and I was so blown away by it, and I like did all this research. I was like, who is this person? Who shot this? And I was like, this Caroline person. Okay. And then, but yeah, I remember looking for that trophy shot. And I was thinking, right. So, I was speaking to Riot Security, and I was like, is it okay that I'm going to be right here when they lift a trophy? I'm going to be right in front of the stage. I'm going to be the first person there, like perfectly symmetrical. And yeah, that played out a bit better for me than I guess it did for you guys. But we also bumped into each other a few times at Worlds 2019, especially in Berlin. There was a few times in the hotel, because I was coming and going a lot in the hotel, because I didn't have a room at the hotel because I was staying in my other apartment at the time in Berlin. So I like met Nick and Caroline the odd time in like the elevator or like around the venue and stuff like that. We had like very like minimal conversations, but what I like about just everything that OneUp does, and this is like a whole team effort, right? This is like Damien and yourself and Caroline and like Miles before. I know Miles pretty well. I've seen him at a few Rainbow Six events. And what I really like about just the whole team at OneUp is how professional you guys look at it in terms of like a production company, you know? And I think this is probably what I'm like the most jealous about with what you guys have, is like you guys have a proper production company, you know? You guys have like everything that you do is like top tier. Whereas I think at G2, we're like getting that way. We're definitely like on the path to that, but you guys are like at the destination already. You know, so you guys have like a lot of people, and like you're very like production focused. Whereas like also sometimes we have to like jump on other things, and we sometimes have to like go to like social media and things like this, and like all kinds of stuff. So what I just like about you guys in general is like everything's like really well thought out, and it seems to me like you guys have a lot of like time to like. I mean, obviously, like a lot of time in esports is not a lot of time in like almost any other production, right? But it seems like you guys sort of know what you're doing. You've got a lot of people to really like perfect things, and that's what I like about all of you guys at OneUp. Not necessarily just you, Nick, but all of you guys.
How are you guys?
I appreciate that. I do want to say really quick, I'm sorry, Mario. I didn't tell you what I like about you, Charles, and I feel bad now. I really, really love the respect that you have for your craft, and I think that's one of the things that makes me respect people in esports a lot. I think that in a lot of ways, it's easy for you to get caught up in the fact that it's easy to get internet clout and stuff like that in this space by just kind of farming your job for likes, and I see it all the time. But I really have a lot of respect for people that really take care and appreciate the players and the sport that we're in. And it doesn't just mean making serious content and stuff all the time. I think that comes in a variety of different ways. It just means that you respect the art, you respect the work, and you respect the people that are involved, and everyone's just trying to do their job to the best of their abilities. So yeah, no, that's the thing I admire the most about Charles.
You warm my heart, Nick. You're a babe.
I'm a little jealous. I'm still waiting for somebody to throw some bouquet of flowers my end, but maybe another episode. We'll do it.
I see what you guys do at ESPAT, and I think it's great. I think I love how like you guys give like a lot of people a lot of good chances, you know, especially with I worked with a lot of freelancers who do some stuff for ESPAT, and they have nothing but good words to say about you guys. And yeah, you guys just really seem to know what you're doing in terms of like the freelancer space, and I think that's really great for people who are, especially like you were talking about before, like up and comers. So good job, Mario.
We appreciate it. We're just going for the same ride as you guys are. So listen, if we eat, you eat. That's how we tell us more about the business side of esports and on the org side. How heavily are you guys involved with brands, sponsors of the organization? Are those shoots pretty fun as well?
You want to start with this, Charles?
Yep. I can start, I guess. So for me, brand videos are what pay the bills, right? Like working with the sponsors and working with all these different like companies who are like, so, you know, more external. It's all about what's paying the bills. Those are the shoots that have the most money in them most of the time, which is fun. You know, like I love this. I like to shoot things where the players are happy. So for me, it's more about making, regardless of what I'm making, whether it's a G2 video or it's a brand video, my job is to make this fun for the player and to make the player enjoy this, regardless of like what the content is or like what the obligation is because of the brand, right? So for me, that's the main thing. I don't necessarily like speak to the brand people. I don't necessarily have these conversations where we're doing like pitching concepts and things like this. I write a lot of concepts, I write a lot of ideas, but I'm not the ones pitching it directly to them. But what I do like to think is that I have an opportunity to pitch stuff which I think players are going to enjoy. You know, and that's what I care about the most, because the worst thing I want to do is pitch a video that a brand really loves, which a player isn't going to enjoy working on. Because for me, it's all about the players. It's all about the players and it's all about them having fun, because when they're having fun, they give me the best content. And you can always tell when players aren't having fun, when they don't want to be there. And sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes the stress of the game and the stress of life in general is just too much. And that's, for me, that's totally fair. You know, I have days where I'm like super stressed, and I guess like everybody has bad days, right? So if I feel responsible for that player having a bad day because the video could have been like maybe a little bit better or a little bit more entertaining or whatever, then that's like is what it is, you know, and that's what I'm like looking to improve on for next time. But I like shooting brand stuff because in the end, like a lot of the money's there and a lot of the big production value things that we do. We shot something for Secret Lab, which is our chair sponsor, a few months ago, and we rented this this mechanical robot thing. It was like this big, and it required like its own operator. This like old guy who's like been operating these things for ages, and it does exactly the same move every single time. So it's like inch perfect. So we were like planned our move, and then we were like switching out players. We had Caps in there on the chair, and then we had Kenny S from the CS team there. We had Carlos there, and it's all this like very like it's built out to be like one shot, you know. And this was a super cool video that like thanks to Secret Lab we had the budget to make, and it was something that I'd never experienced before, and I'd never like tried out working with like these like motion control robots and anything. And like at the end of the day, I was also learning from this, right? This was also something where I was like, yeah, maybe we should try this motion control thing. I've never actually used it, but maybe we should try it. And we tried it, and it actually worked pretty well. It actually worked pretty well. So yeah, I love doing the G2 stuff, and I love doing the brand stuff.
But all things equal, when the players are in their element, it makes
100%.
it easier, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So when they're pushing product, it's just a different animal versus they're on stage. It's almost like they don't even see you. You get the raw emotion versus an orchestrated piece of content shooting for a brand. What about you, Nick? You guys have some interesting sponsors and some brands that pay at Team Liquid.
Yeah, so I want to, before I lose this, I do want to quickly touch on that last point. I think it's really important, and I think I heard someone on one of your most recent shows talk about this as well. I think it's really important that even though we get so close to the players, when they're on stage, when they're competing, and even when we're in the back rooms, you know, when leading up until the games, we really have to be very fly on the wall, and that's a trained skill that takes a lot of time. And sometimes you will interact with these guys, right? Like sometimes Broxa would come and, you know, just like say something to me, or Impact would say something, or Peter Double F, sorry, like those kind of things, you know. So it's hard to do, but I think it's what's most important to keep both competitive integrity and to keep the players happy. But yeah, I wanted to mention that before we get into the sponsor stuff. So sponsor content, it's very fun to work on. I'll be honest. It feels more like what Charles was talking about a little bit earlier, like when we get to actually play production studio a little bit. You know, and there's a few different pillars of sponsor content that we do. There's the Team Liquid sponsor content, which is like, you know, the Secret Labs, the Alienware, the Honda. We don't do too much stuff with Honda beyond like the Origins pieces, which we're doing right now, and then was Level Up last year. And then Alienware can be anything from Squad to, which is our League of Legends documentary series, or our, I'm BCam for Alienware's product review videos, or like I am doing product shots for their newest Alienware 360 hertz monitor, blah, 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 right? Like there's a lot of different things like that where you get to just have fun with it, and you get to play brand guidelines and look at the books, and these are the certain angles you can shoot, and these are the ones that you can't. And that can be fun. And working within those guidelines is always where you get really creative. What I also love doing is we get to work with our apparel team, which is spearheaded by Travis, he's brilliant mind and the apparel space, and then Damien, who's in the branding department, a creative director. And we get to, work with the amazing apparel team that makes these great pieces of clothing like the one that I'm wearing. And we get to make cool ads and specs for these kind of projects. So one we did last year was the reflective LQD hoodie, where we did like a 30-second spot just pretty much about it was kind of like a grunge reflective underground feel. And that was really fun, and it was a bit of a challenge to work with. And so that's always fun. One of the ones that we did last year that I think was the most forward-facing, though, was obviously the announcement of the Marvel partnership. And so that was a full team effort. The budget was a little bit higher than we normally would have. We had Miles, Caroline, myself, Joseph, Damien. We're all pretty much working nonstop over the course of the last like week and a half until it released, to actually get it over the finish line. And that was a crazy process. Miles flew in 3 days to Montpellier, France, by himself with 4 Pelican cases, a tripod, and all this gear that he to go shoot in this like airport base pretty much. And it was incredibly difficult. They were trying to find a punching bag, like him and Joka Steve, our team manager, like trying to find a punching bag in Montpellier. And his tripod got lost, and half his batteries got lost, and he pretty much had to shoot the whole thing handheld in like 20 minutes, and then flew back. And then while we were here, we were figuring out how to do the last team shot, and we're flying players in and out because certain players had dinner plans, and like we just ended up getting really crazy. And yeah, we ended up, like Charles said, we get it over the finish line, and we made it happen. And ultimately, we were really satisfied. But I learned a lot from that shoot. I hadn't done a whole lot of work with the Movi Pro. And that was an experience for me to operate with the Movi Pro. And it was just one of those pieces of gear that was a little different from the gimbals I'd used before. But, when you get to larger scale, you're trying to use bigger cameras, just something we had to learn. And it was a fun experience.
Charles, any advice you can pass on to the up-and-coming crop of creatives coming up? They're obviously, you guys are doing some phenomenal work. You're very social on platforms. So when you guys say something or do something or produce work, somebody's watching. What's the good, the bad, the ugly of the profession? It's not all peaches and cream, obviously. What sort of advice do you have for some of the up-and-comers?
I think for me, and again, like just going back to like how I got into this was sort of a bit of a fluke. It was a lot of luck and not a lot of grind. And I think that obviously people do get lucky, and I got very lucky in doing this. But I don't necessarily think that the way I did it was particularly the best way to get into it. I even have a lot of people come in to me like on Twitter, and they ask about how do you get into the scene? What can I do to get more noticed? And I think it really starts at like the lower tier organizations and the lower tier events. I think there's a lot. I mean, me specifically, like I know a lot of people in the UK scene just because that's where I'm from, and there's a lot of teams in the UK scene like Vexed and M&M Gaming, and obviously Excel's a much bigger one now that they're in the LEC and they have a lot of investment behind them. But like Excel back in the day, and I think the best thing to do is to just get to an event. Obviously, again, it's hard in times like this because there's not really that much going on. But like, get to an event. Everybody can sort of have access to get a good trophy shot, in my opinion. Like, as long as you can position yourself well, if you can sweet talk some security guards, or because I'm sure Nick also does the same, right? Where sometimes you have to bend the rules just ever so slightly to make sure you get like the shot. And I'm not saying like go and jump up on the stage or like go like put yourself in any danger or anything like this, right? Obviously, we need to like stay safe and we need to like follow the rules, but like I think everybody can get a good trophy shot, and I think you start there, start shooting trophy shots, start shooting hype, start shooting. If you can get to the side of the stage where nobody can watch because you don't get a very good view, this is a great spot to get like one of the side angles of a player having a great, anybody who has like a great round or like a great game, and if you can get that shot and then throw it into a reel, like do some creative editing, like really know who you're shooting for, and what you're shooting for is like primarily like young guys like us, like around about our age group. And, you're not shooting anything for like 60-year-old, 50-year-old like businessman, because those people are in esports for sure, but those people aren't going to be the content people that you want to attract, right? So you need to come up with something that's fun and that's like really grippy, that really like hooks people like us, where we look at it and we think, wow, this guy's got something. And I think anybody can do it. Like you said, Nick, like you started with a T4i, I started with a T3i. These are very consumer level pieces of equipment, and you just sort of build up from there. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need these gimbals like Nick was saying, or you don't need these motion control robots to make cool stuff. You just make cool stuff. And I think for people who are in the scene, a lot of advice I give to like videographers that I see, that I also noticed over the past, like maybe 2019 was the year like I like noticed this a lot, is don't overshoot, because if you overshoot, you end up missing a lot of the good stuff in the edit, especially if you have external editors. And our editors at G2, they're great. They go through all of the footage with a fine-tooth comb. But I know certain editors in the past from like the film industry where they miss a lot of stuff. If they look at a big folder that has hundreds of files, they miss a lot of stuff. So I think it's all about like knowing what to shoot and knowing what not to shoot. And for me, yeah, it really depends on what stage of your career you're in. Me giving advice to somebody who's got no experience is different to the advice I give to somebody who's like maybe done a little bit of work here and there, and now they're looking to step up from sort of like the pro-am sort of scene into the professional scene.
What about you, Nick? LA is a busy hub for gaming and esports, so there's opportunities. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very competitive space, but I want to say that I've been super impressed with the talent that has come up in LA, especially. I, like Charles, got lucky. I knew my timing, and I knew when to try to make it happen. And I got lucky that somebody was willing to give me the opportunity, and I think I took full advantage of it. But I think that there are opportunities for new people to come in, and I think, one piece of advice that I got was that we're not chasing after the people that are on their way out. Like we're running away from the people that are on the way in. And so the people that are underneath us are the ones that are motivating us to be better. Because I think that it's hard to make fresh and exciting things all the time. And it's a fine line as to what is new versus, what is a polished version of something that already exists. And like you're always walking that line, especially in esports where everything's such fast turnaround, right? Like there can't be an amazing, great new idea that's well thought out that comes out every day. But I think it's important to remember that the reason that we do this and the passion behind it, and I think if you have the passion, you have the willingness to learn, and you want to be a part of this, then that's the best advice I can give you, is just do that. And, we'll find you. I think, that was what I did. And I think that's what a lot of people that are around me have done, is they didn't necessarily go and look to get this achievement. It was just, I'm doing the work because I love it, and I'm willing to work with other people. and it just worked out.
Stay humble, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, super. All right, this is the part of the episode where we get to find out what sort of company you guys would love to be around with, whether it's celebrities or just family members or peers in your industry. 3 dinner guests. Hopefully you can figure out 3. Charles, you go first.
Okay, so I put a lot of thought into this, and there was a lot of people. I would have dinner with many, many people. But my number 1 will always be Her Majesty the Queen. I'm like a big monarchist. I'm a big traditionalist. So, and I just think she's just probably one of the most interesting people, if not the most interesting person alive today. I'd love to have dinner with her. The second one is my all-time favorite cinematographer, Roger Deakins. So if you don't know, if you're not familiar with his work, he shot Skyfall. He shot Shawshank Redemption. And he also shot the most recent Blade Runner.
Yeah.
He's like my favorite cinematographer of all time. I could have some great conversations, and I just think I could learn so much with him over just one dinner. It would be well worth him being on the list. And then
Shawshank, one of my favorite movies. Are you guys familiar with the baptism theme? Something I learned in high school years ago about a certain part of any movie where you see water, it literally kind of triggers a baptism theme. So when you see, him come out of the tunnel and the sewer, and he's, he doesn't come out and it's sunny. It's literally a month.
It's pouring rain.
Is that something that you guys do? When you guys watch a movie, do you look at certain things like the baptism theme?
For sure. I can't watch me. Unfortunately, the downside of this profession is that you really get taken out of movies by any little imperfection. But especially what you're saying with the baptism theme, I'd love to shoot something with water in the future. Just have one of these big ass rain machines and just shoot everything in slow motion. I don't know how down my players would be, but a guy can dream. But yeah, for sure. There's a bunch of techniques that I have learnt from being at film school, from being around more traditional cinematographers, that I definitely bring into the esports world.
Yeah.
And then
so, right.
I think
Andy Dufresne, the creator, and your third guest.
And my third guest is going to be Optic Hex, because for me, he's the godfather of esports. I met him very briefly last year at Esports Awards, but he was with Nade and a few of the other big guys. So I literally just we did a little handshake. He asked me what I was nominated for, and he seems like a lovely guy. I would like to get to know him a little bit more. But just in terms of the esports space, I'm here to stay. I'm fully aware that it's going to be very difficult for me to go back to traditional film and television industry, because that world moves at a different pace than this world moves. And I'd love to stay in esports for the rest of my life. I don't think I'm necessarily going to be running around with a camera for that whole time, right? So just learning anything more about esports in terms of the business side or the player development side, or he knows the audience so well, and he knows what his community wants, and he's always been willing to take risks. And I just have a lot of respect for this guy, because he's just been around for so long, and he is, in my opinion, the king of esports.
No doubt. Love his podcast. Any accolades that come his way, really well deserving. And obviously, we're all focusing on Chicago Optic now, and the Green Wall's fired up. So here in the States, he's a trailblazer, obviously worldwide, but that's a really, really cool crew you put together. And obviously, what kind of cuisine do you think we're eating?
I don't know. I know Hex likes his Mexican. I feel the Queen will be a little bit more traditional. And then I've never met Roger Deakins before, but he seems like a very down to earth. He's very, very low key guy. So I imagine he'd have something like shepherd's pie or something that's very English, comfort food, something like this. And then I'm a really fussy eater. I only eat McDonald's and fast food and garbage basically. So it would be a mix. It would be a strange dinner. Don't get me wrong, it'd be a strange dinner.
I just hope there wouldn't be too many F-bombs right next to the Queen. We'd have to kind of,
That's true. Me and Hex would have to curb our language. Yeah. Roger's a little bit, he's very like classic. He'd get along very well with the Queen. I'd sit them next to each other, and then me and Hex could sit next to each other.
Speaking of language, let's hope Carlos doesn't, just try and pull up a seat as well.
I wouldn't put it past him, but we'd welcome him. We would welcome Carlos in as well. Yeah. Sure, that would spice things up a little bit. If things started getting dry for whatever reason, Carlos could come in. Carlos has actually punched the Queen of England on a video, in a G2 video, so he'd have a lot of explaining to do.
No filter at G2, that's for sure. What about Nick's table? Who's there, Nick?
Man, I was going to say Roger Deakins as well, but I feel like I should come up with somebody else now. So I'm gonna stay true to what my list was. So first would be Roger Deakins. I think I listened to his podcast or the Team Deakins podcast. Who they do a show. Him and I believe it's his wife, who work on a lot of films together, and have worked on many films over the course of his career. And most recently, 1917. And they just have such interesting conversations, and I just want to hear more. Like I want to hear him answer some of my questions. So I think it would be really interesting to have him. One of the most recent ones he did was with Greg Frazier, and so I think it would be really cool to maybe also have another cinematographer at the table. So my second guest would be Greg Frazier, because I feel like they also kind of represent two different generations as well. Greg Frazier, most recently known, he did the last episode of season 1 of The Mandalorian with shoot, I'm blanking on his name, Taika Waititi as the director. I think Greg Frazier is incredibly talented DP, and I think they had a really interesting conversation. So let's continue that. And then my third guest, I need somebody that I know personally at the table, or else I'm not going to be able to have an unfiltered conversation because it's going to be way more closed in. So I'm going to invite Damien Estrada, our creative director, and he's a film buff. He worked at Nickelodeon. I think he's a crazy nerd, and I think we'd be able to nerd out together. And the food is we're having K-barbecue. I feel like most interesting conversations that I've had with people have just been around the table where we're all cooking together, and there's plenty of time to talk.
Yeah, that's pretty much the K-barbecue is pretty much the staple on Instagram when everybody's eating. Can't really go wrong there. Yeah, super. Listen, I want to thank you guys for coming on. It's a great opportunity for me to get to know you guys better and the organizations. I do want to give kudos to 1UP, to Liquid, to G2 for really having the foresight to invest in the studio and in creatives. You guys are part of, not just yourself, but part of a big team. And the amount of content you guys are putting out is really instrumental in growing the industry and growing esports, having it exposed to brands, the fan base, with platforms available to ingest content. It's just great what you guys are doing. I'm kind of jealous because traditional sports to me doesn't even really come close as far as content than esports and gaming. And you guys are at the forefront and have a platform to do it. So kudos to you guys for really being at the forefront, both personally and with the organizations. Nick, I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving in a couple of days. Charles, you're probably working, so no Thanksgiving for you. But if you do come to New York and you're rocking the Brooklyn Nets hat, we'll kind of show you what a Thanksgiving holiday looks like. It's the 3 F's, and it's not the F-bomb, but it's food, family, and football, American football. So American football, yeah. There's 3 games, and we just sit. We eat at 2:00, right, Nick? And we eat probably again around 8:00, and we all kind of pass out on the couch. So make your way to the States in time for Thanksgiving one of these years.
All right, I'm going to make sure, Mario. I'm going to be knocking on your door one year.
That's it. Well, super. Listen, thanks for coming on. We'll do this again in 2021. I hope to have a backdrop of an event, of a LAN event, where you guys will kind of give us some insight as far as what the event will be and what you're shooting. And again, really appreciate you guys coming on.
I appreciate the invite, man. It's been a good time.
We'll do this again soon. Bye now.
All right.
Later.